Okay, in this video we're going to use completing the square to derive the quadratic formula, which is the easiest and best way to solve a quadratic formula in my opinion. So to start off, to recall how to do completing the square, the first thing we want to do is divide everything by a to make it a monic polynomial, which means that the coefficient of the x squared term is 1. So we get x squared over b over ax plus c over a is equal to 0. And then the next step in completing the square is to move the constant over the other side. So we need to subtract c over a from both sides. And so we're going to end up with x squared plus b over ax equals negative c over a. And now remember that the next step in completing the square is to take this quantity, whatever the coefficient of the x term is, divide by 2 and square that. So we want b over 2a squared, which will give us b squared over 4a squared. And we're going to add that to both sides. So I have b squared over 4a squared and b squared over 4a squared. And now that makes the left-hand side a perfect square. So the left-hand side is going to be equal to x plus b over 2a quantity squared. So this whole thing right here is equal to that. And you can check that by foiling this if you want. And then the right-hand side, I'm going to make the b squared over 4a squared. I'm going to write that first because it's positive, it has a positive sign. And then I'm going to subtract c over a. And then to actually make this subtraction, it's a good idea to get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 4a over 4a. That's the same as multiplying by 1. So note that 4a divided by 4a is equal to 1, so I'm not really changing anything, I'm just changing the appearance of the c over a. So that gives me b squared over 4a squared minus 4ca over 4a squared. And on the left hand side I still have x plus b over 2a squared. And now what we want to do is take the square root of both sides. So let me kind of move over here, and I'll rewrite it just to keep things simple. So this is x plus b over 2a squared is equal to b squared minus 4ca all over 4a squared. So since I have a common denominator, I can write it all over 4a squared there. Okay, now I'm going to take the square root. And when you do that, you get x plus b over 2a equals the square root plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Alright, and now I can subtract b over 2a from both sides. And what we're left with is x is equal to the opposite of b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2a. And so you might be wondering what just happened in that last step. What I'm doing is breaking this up as the square root of b squared minus 4ac over the square root of 4a squared. But then the square root of 4a squared is 2a. So this right here is equal to 2a. So I can get a common denominator there as well. And so the final answer is that the solution to the quadratic formula should be the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And in class I'll go over a couple different rhymes to help you remember that formula.